Hello, welcome to the Pop Off PC Mag's video game show. I'm Jordan Miner, joined by my colleague Will Greenwald.
Hello.
And Will, today we're here to talk about this thing. The Nintendo Switch OLED model comes out in just a couple days from when we're recording this. We both have one, and we've both been using it. And we thought we'd just talk about it. You have yours handy?
It's in the other room charging. I've been playing it a fair amount.
All right, well, then I'll use mine. It can be the visual reference for the rest of the episode. This is the new Switch model. It's coming out. It is more expensive, but there's some stuff going on with it, which is why, they cost more. But I guess first we should talk about what it isn't. It is not the Switch Pro, this fabled device we've been talking about for the past 2 years.
It is not a more powerful system. It isn't the Switch X. It isn't the Switch Pro. It isn't the new Nintendo Switch. It's just a Switch with an OLED screen.
Right. And so it's not, go ahead.
But I mean, there are some improvements to it still. Like it's extra $50, and for what you get for the $50 is worth it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a reason to replace your Switch.
Yeah. So let's get into some of those reasons. I guess we should start with I think that kind of the lesser features and ramp up to the more exciting ones. So I would say this is a device that your primary benefit is going to be if you're playing in a handheld mode, but there are some changes to the dock. My dock is kind of off screen, so I won't pull it out. But the dock has a wired Ethernet port in it, which Nintendo has never done before. Previously, you had to buy your own adapter. It's a different kind of back to it. It's shaped differently. There's this kind of curved entryway, and there's a kind of curved top to it as well, so it looks more rounded.
And it just pops off. It isn't just like a door.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't like that because I feel like I had to pop it off every time I wanted to put something in it.
It is, but every time I would close the door, the cable would get squeezed in. So it's just clipping it on. It feels a bit smoother.
I guess because I'm always taking cables. I guess I'm always taking cables in and out of my dock because I'm always putting something else in that port. But yeah, it's not a door anymore. It's kind of just sealed shut. And the dock is white. That's it.
Isn't there also a black version
of the new dock?
Actually, I should check that. Is the new dock entirely white? Because we got the white version. So there's the white Joy-Cons and the thing is, but isn't there also going to be a black version of the OLED Switch?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the white version ones we have, and that's one that's been kind of the center of the marketing campaign. But I actually don't know that. I mean, the previous
new color.
Yeah, I mean, the previous Switch dock was black, but yeah, I mean, I think that's it. If you,
there are a few other things that have changed with it, and also the entire Switch itself is black, so it's just the Joy-Cons and dock, which is strange. But on the back of the system itself, the kickstand is much better.
Well, yeah, let's get into the system itself, because I think it's all the things that will change if you're using it docked on your TV.
Yeah, which
is virtually nothing. But yeah, the system itself has more substantial changes. So as you were saying, the kickstand.
Yeah, it is a. Actually, why don't I just grab mine because that'll be easiest. Sorry.
Cool. In the meantime, I'm going to show off what he's talking about. You can see his secret lab gaming chair he's got there. I'm sure we've got coverage of that. But what he's talking about is that on the Switch OLED, there's now this much bigger, beefier, stronger kickstand, unlike I was showing the people what we're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, the kickstand is a lot better compared to the kickstand on the original Switch, which is unusable.
Yeah, it is completely unusable.
So obviously makes it a lot easier to prop it up in tabletop mode.
Yep.
You can set it at a variety of angles. When you pop the Joy-Cons on and off, it will stay upright. It won't fall over.
And this will actually make it a lot easier for me to show it because it won't try to blur the Switch. You can work at any angle. It's a firm hinge, which is really important because it doesn't snap off, and the hinge is firm, so you can use it at any angle.
Yeah.
Which is the other one, it was a tiny strip. It would get maybe this wide, and that was it. So it was super easy to just snap it off. Yeah, pretty much useless. On the back, the only difference is the micro SD card is sideways, which I kind of like because I tend to fiddle with things a lot when I'm playing, and just knowing that the downward facing card was there, I'd keep wanting to touch with my thumb. So like having it be less accessible with my thumb was like, okay, there's no risk of me accidentally popping it out and crashing the Switch. So
corrupting all your data.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, have you just noticed that like with the stand, I'm just playing in tabletop mode, like to test out, but also just like, it's so much more viable. As like this sort of, this third mode of the Switch they've always been talking about that before was there's kind of
the mode that has been hyped up since the Switch's launch. And just like people have kind of said like, yeah, the kickstand's unusable, but I don't think it's really hit home just because no one bothered trying to use it tabletop.
Right. But now you can, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. There's it's bigger speakers, which also kind of pairs well with tabletop mode. So you're propping it up like a little TV, and that part of it works.
Yeah.
But I guess we should get into the actual namesake of this thing.
There's another detail. It does it twice as much internal storage. It's 64 instead of 32 gigs, which that's good. Like you really should still get a micro SD card because I have a 256 gig card on there. Like it was really cheap, and it's like a Samsung Evo card, high speed. It's a good card, and I can put like pretty much all of my games because the Switch doesn't have any like Call of Duty 600 gigabyte installs. Like I have Mario, I have Zelda, I have Mario Kart. I have like pretty much every major game on here, and I still have space. So get a card, even though you could do a whole lot with 64 gigs on a Switch.
Yeah, especially. This might be something to research. I think because when some of these bigger games have come to Switch, they have exceeded that 32 gig limit, and so they wouldn't fit on a card. And then the box art would say you need an SD card to download this game.
Yep.
I would wonder now if this could hold all of those. I think it probably can. I doubt there's any Switch games that even if they exceed 32 gigs, exceed 4 gigs or like 54 gigs.
I think any singular one. I think like the biggest one I have on here is The Witcher 3, like Wild Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can probably bring up my own library. And this is actually a really good example. Like this is how much wider the screen is because it's a bigger screen.
Yeah.
Transitioning into what the screen looks like.
Right.
You don't really notice it until you touch the OLED Switch. This is really tiny. Sorry, there's no personal information on there, and I'm pretty sure it isn't getting close enough on that. But
it's just a blur, so it works out.
Good. But you don't really notice it until you touch the OLED Switch that, wow, the black border on the regular Switch is huge. Like it is like an inch. And here it's like it goes nearly to the edge. It's like maybe 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters. And like it's pretty much the same size, but it covers way more and it just looks way nicer because of it.
Yeah, I've never been a person who gives a shit about bezels one way or another. But yeah, it's definitely noticeable. Like in my old Switch, I would use the black theme in the hopes that it would kind of just sort of blur the black bezel with the rest of it. But with this, I'm using the white theme, and it just sort of, it's not edge to edge, but it is a lot. It's a lot closer. But that's not the only thing about the screen. Not just that's bigger, but it's also OLED. This more vibrant. You're a TV guy. How would you describe OLED's like picture quality versus other kinds of display formats?
Going into TV details, I could just go way long and
you're like a certified TV wizard, right? Don't you have like a TV degree?
Kind of, yeah. I am a certified calibrator and home theater THX expert, etc. But the thing is, for like devices this small, a lot of like considerations that you have with TVs, like peak brightness and stuff like that, they don't quite apply the same way. Like an issue with OLEDs, like I love OLEDs because they have like incredible contrast because each pixel is emissive, which means each pixel puts out light instead of LCD where there's a panel that forms the picture and then there's a light behind it, which basically makes it light up. Though even that technology has gotten way, way better in the last few years. But with OLED, the big deal here is color and how the range of color it has compared to even the LCD on the previous Switch. I mean, if you noticed it just when setting it up, when that red of Switch just comes out, it's like huge.
Yeah. It was more striking than I was expecting. Again, as someone who doesn't really care that much about different displays, but yeah, it's definitely noticeable. Just that increase in color depth and whatnot.
It is actually something I would love to try to test with the Switch. The only problem is there's a problem with like all consoles and pretty much all handhelds mostly. There isn't really any way to send images to the Switch to like display stuff. I mean, I don't even know if I could manually load like photos on it, because even they have a lot of usability implementations if you want to connect the Switch with literally anything else besides a TV. What I would do for pretty much anything else on the screen, you put like a bright color on it, like hard red, hard green, hard blue, and then measure it. And then we could actually see how much wider it is. We can't do that, but I can say eyeballing it, yeah, it is much wider. Like totally. It is much more rich color.
Yeah. And that's why, again, like your primary benefit from this between the bigger screen, the kickstand, and the OLED screen is that it's primarily for handheld. Like the primary benefits are in handheld play. Yeah. I would say. And that's kind of where the Switch, that's still what the Switch has over, even with these next gen consoles out, you can't play them portably. So yeah, you're getting more premium experience that you can only kind of get from this sort of device.
Yeah. And for an OLED, this is a really bright screen. This is, again, more of an issue with TVs. OLEDs aren't nearly as bright as most LCD TVs. But the screen on this, if you crank it up, and like I recommend anyone turn off the automatic brightness setting, because just that never works. It always sucks. But if you manually set it, you can get this really bright, which is nice if you're in lighting for it.
So perfect for your rooftop parties. Now that maybe you can go back outside again.
Yep.
So that's the Switch OLED. I would say.
Well, let's also talk about one thing that hasn't changed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yes. Also true.
And I've been pretty like, I recognize there are problems with the Joy-Cons, because look at them. They're tiny. They're laid out kind of weird, because each one, like you can turn it sideways and use it as a thing, which I think is pretty useless unless you have like enough people for your rooftop party that you can have everyone playing basically an inferior experience of Mario Kart by using it. But the problem is, this is the first time I've noticed it with my hands, but playing not Metroid Dread, but Castlevania Advanced Collection. Okay. My thumb has finally started to cramp up using the left Joy-Con, like using the buttons as directions. Like that does start to hurt. And if Nintendo would put out like a first party, just a handheld version with a D-pad, like that's the Switch that the Pro controller does, or even if they just remodel the Joy-Cons, because the original concept for it, it's not perfect. That'd be great. But you reviewed the best alternative to that, the Hori.
Yeah, I don't have them on hand, but yeah, those big dumb Hori ones.
That's so much better, but also way more unwieldy.
Which also I had to use in this game that we're going to talk about next, Metroid Dread, coming out on the same day as Switch OLED. We've been playing that as well. That game is hard. That game is harder than I was expecting.
It is hard, and it is, and this is really typical for any like Metroidvania, what is it called? Search action game now?
Search action game, yes, because they can't. What is Nintendo going to call it a Metroidvania? Like,
no, but are they calling it a search action game, or are they just saying, here, have Metroid?
Yeah, that's calling a Metroid game a Metroidvania is a really funny kind of tautology. But yeah, that
is front loaded, which is a big thing for the genre, because you start out super weak. And one of the big joys of playing a Metroid game is that as you get more skills and everything, your means of traversal and your ability to absorb damage is so much better that you can just stomp all over these areas that you had to like crawl through really slowly at the beginning. But that means the beginning is really, really hard.
Yeah. And like it carries on from Samus Returns, that sort of like manual aiming stuff, kind of 360 degrees. And I feel like I need the better analog sticks and the bigger grip to kind of do that comfortably at the speed that it wants you to do that at. But I'm still playing it. I assume you still are as well, but
me too.
I'm enjoying it. I think it looks great on the OLED screen. There was some kind of, people were like, 2D, is that really like a AAA, kind of launch game thing? But like, I think it looks great. I think the maps are really dense. I think the lighting is really great.
I think Nintendo kind of shares this just because of how they've been looking at the Metroid series. Like they're calling this Metroid 5 Dread. Mm-hmm. Like they kind of accept that Prime is popular, and there are definitely a few nods from Mercury Steam in the game, but I don't think they really see it as part of the Metroid series, like officially. Yeah. So this is like Kirby until the new one comes out. This is going to be just Metroid is a 2D series, and this is a really well polished 2D series. Mercury Steam is the same company that did Samus Returns, which was really good, and I have to say way better on the Switch. I'm amazed they didn't port it to the Switch, since it was like an end of days 3DS game.
Yeah, it was after the Switch was already out. Yeah. So
This is really good. It does have like, I'm warming a lot more to the elements because like them building this world of ZDR from the ground up means they can make it feel a lot more Super Metroid-ish in exploration, because the pacing of Samus Returns is weird because it's built for Game Boy.
Yeah, it's got all those Game Boy routes. It's very segmented. The areas don't even have names, I don't think. There's no real reason to go back to places, which is like the whole thing. That's the whole search action.
It's even more linear than Metroid Fusion.
Yeah.
But I had some issues with Samus Returns just because it was so kind of railroaded that I didn't really appreciate sort of the options of like the melee counter and being able to aim really like precisely, because that just felt like, okay, this is most of the gameplay since I'm not doing a lot of exploring. But now that it's part of like a more Super Metroid scope game of like, okay, I can go different places and I also have these tools. Yeah. That's really, it appeals to me more.
Yeah, it's definitely, I like it a lot more. I didn't finish Samus Returns. I kind of got bored with it like halfway through. Speaking of like things that make you feel very weak in the beginning, one of these game's big gimmicks are these Emmy robots that are stalking you in these zones, and if they get you, it's over unless you can do this really split-second counter move.
It is like frame perfect. Like I've done it maybe once.
It's that when you get it though, it's really satisfying. You get the jump on those guys. Yeah. But I'm curious to see how people react to this. Because on one hand, I think it can be very frustrating to just die constantly. And they're good about checkpointing and putting you like right back where you were. Yeah. And they're good about keeping those zones pretty contained. So it's like these kind of spurts of tense kind of cat and mouse stuff. Yeah. But it's tough until you kind of figure out how to cheese them.
I don't love it just because I don't really like sort of high stress, like being chased by a one-hit kill enemy, like in general in games. Like I know some people really like it, but like I even found like the SAX parts in Fusion to be like pretty stressful. But I'm hating it less in Metroid Dread than I thought I was going to, because as you said, there are zones where like, you know where an enemy is going to be and where you need to be on your toes. And it is not the entire map. It is like these blocks of places, and everything there is built around like being able to play cat and mouse using your skills and not just running through all of the game's geometry. Like these are definite like little set pieces where you're supposed to have a challenge of avoiding Emmy, but it's not that bad. Like you know the scope of it, and
you can pause and like plan out your route, like looking at the map, and
And I do think the static grain is a little bit annoying, because whenever you go into an Emmy zone, it gets all like old timey transmission looking, which is weird.
It turns into Silent Hill.
Yeah, it pretty much does. But no, it's cool. And when you do the thing that lets you neutralize the threat in a given zone, it just feels really satisfying, because now you can just stomp all over it and don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Which is rad.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm having a great time so far. So yeah, those are both out on October 8th. We'll have coverage of both of those, the OLED Switch and Metroid Dread. But my opinion so far.
We'll have reviews up now when you're watching this.
True. Yes. We're moving through space and time. I will say I'm not, you can decide for yourself, but I will say at least first impressions may change. First impressions. I think if I already had a Switch, if I already had a regular Switch, like a dock and everything, I don't think I would need this. Maybe if I had a Switch Lite, it'd be worth the upgrade, but not if I had a regular Switch. But if you don't have any kind of Switch, I think it's a good purchase.
Yeah, this is definitely, you don't need to replace your Switch, especially if you already have a good SD card, because you don't need that extra space. The screen on the regular Switch is still really good, and it's the same resolution. You're not going to get any more processing power, so like there's still going to be the same performance across the board. But if you're just getting a Switch for the first time, spending that extra $50 for a bigger screen, more storage, and a way more usable kickstand is worth it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the Switch OLED. We'll probably talk this time next year when they announce that 4K Switch, like those rumors came out that Nintendo had to go on Twitter and say we're wrong, because they're definitely not lying. The corporation would never lie to make
that. Would still be way faster than I would expect Nintendo to launch any 4K console. Like I'm not expecting to see one until 2026.
So we'll see. But in the meantime, we got this. Yep. We got this.
It's real good.
Yep. All right. We'll talk to you next time.
Mm-hmm.